because I thought some guy with a master's in astrophysics or astronomy was going to call me up and say, you forgot to do this math, you forgot to carry the 2. And that's it. You screwed it up. You can shut down your channel now and everyone can go home. The first part of the...
So 2 aspects to unravel here. First one is nobody's responding to him. This is a very interesting phenomena where we are an internet generation and we think just because we put something up there, people will respond to it.
Yeah.
And it is, as a scientist, I could say that people have so much going on in their lives, so unless someone's looking out for flat earth theory, they're not going to find that video.
Well, and it sort of says, like, I'm putting this out, this is my evidence, this is my arguments, and unless a scientist specifically debunks me, I am right. Which assumes that what it is to be a scientist with authority and expertise is to address every claim out there with the full ability to disprove it. It's a really high bar.
Yeah, but he put the hypothesis, why aren't there planes flying out there? I want answers. Then he has to go out looking for answers rather than waiting for people to come to him to give answers.
It's confirmation bias, but it's also like that appeal to ignorance, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just like, unless I'm disproven, my claim is true. It's like, no, unless you're disproven, your claim is possible.
Yeah.
You need proof for your claim.
Yeah, that's the way he's thinking is, if I just keep speeding around town and I'm never ticketed, then there is no speed limit.
Yeah.
Those signs are all bogus. It's only when it's ticketed that, oh yeah, there must be laws. And so that's exactly observation bias.
Yeah.
The second aspect was he's also looking at comments and highlighting comments that agree with him.
Exactly.
Which is, again, observation bias.
And there's something weird, too, about, like, who he's highlighting as a commenter. Like, there's these other sites, like debunking sites, that are... Even the debunking sites are agreeing with me. But anyone can call themselves a debunker, right? That's not a protected, certified expertise in anything. That could just be skepticism. Just say, I don't believe anything, right? And we know from the psychological literature that the more a person believes in one conspiracy theorist, the more likely they are to believe in more.
Yeah.
And so the people who are agreeing with him might exactly be the people that are most easily to convince of this, and then that's how you start building that echo chamber.
Yeah.
An online echo chamber where everyone is sort of reinforcing each other. And then, Mark's being really honest here, saying, like, it feels good, right? Like, it feels good. Like, people want to interview me. I'm being embraced by a community. It really shows the stakes or the risk around him eventually saying, actually, you know what, I looked into the evidence a little more, and now I don't believe this. No one's going to be inviting him anymore in the same way.
It takes a lot of guts to admit one is wrong. Even at the smallest scales, where when we are a kid, we try to not take ownership of our mistakes. It becomes much more and more complicated because now there is reputation at line, self-esteem and self-worth possibly at line, income. So it becomes very difficult to then come out of what you have always believed in.
And their argument is almost the same about scientists. Well, their income is tied to the sphere theory.
Yeah.
Their income is tied, but it's the question of, can a person have more than one motive? So can I be influenced by both the motive to have an income, because I have to meet my daily needs and I have to meet the needs of my family, and can I also be motivated by the truth or some other higher goal like conservation or knowledge or whatever scientists have as a higher value?
And one could say that income goes both ways, like for scientists as well, like there is income tied to it, but in the end, for scientists, it leads to technology. And if their science is wrong, the technology is going to fail, and then their income will dry out. There are science careers that end because like whatever they were trying to prove or disprove didn't happen, or they couldn't adapt to the new changing theory of like how what the new evidence comes in, what that means, and that's why science is a ongoing and cumulative process and not a static thing.
Well, and if they were just saying whatever based on what gave them income, eventually I think that someone else who was saying whatever just based on income would have competing claims. So there would have to be some kind of reputational, like long-term, you have to be able to have a sustainable model of how you're getting your income. And it can't just be getting bribed, and paid off because then you'll lose your career, essentially.
Yeah, so all of our space missions and satellite missions are based upon Earth being round. So if Earth was not around, all of those calculations that have been done for the rockets would have failed. We won't have satellites, we won't have satellite internet, we won't have satellite phones, we won't have satellite TV, we won't have GPS. All of those would have failed. These are all multi-billion-dollar stakes, or possibly even more. And forget about even satellite. Even when radio antenna or television towers are put, they also take into account the curvature of the Earth, and that's how those are placed. All of those would have failed.
Right.
Right? So there's
but
a
that
lot
could just be a big lie
too.
from NASA that's working.
But there's so many independent parties outside of NASA that use that information, right? So
I know. It does start getting to the level of what is really upholding this level of conspiracy, and how is that possible? Like, why aren't there defectors? Why aren't there whistleblowers? Why aren't there people who would then make their reputation on the basis of exposing all of this?
Yeah.
And it's really too bad that someone who has a skeptical mind, who's interested in how the world works, is led astray.
Especially in the era we live in, it's important to have a skeptical mind, but it's also important to acknowledge when an evidence is presented to what one believes in, to supporting it or disapproving it. So right now, what I would say is this is all theoretical, and there is theoretical science, but can it be applied? Are there Flat Earth Society affiliated people who have started their own companies based upon this knowledge that actually use that information and can show it actually works?
Well, you're going to see.
In any major city, but now we're doing an international conference, which is in Raleigh, North Carolina in the fall. So I'm going to be doing the keynote speech on the first day.
Because he's talking about a conference with a keynote speech, and he has a shirt that says "Research Flat Earth." So conferencing, research, keynote speeches. What?
It's the same terminology and the same actions as what a normal or regular science would progress.
Yeah.
And that's a part of what I think is the choice of word and how things are organized is supposed to instill legitimacy.
Yeah, it's sort of like when you say research flat Earth, they're not saying, or at least I don't take him as saying, research flat Earth and come up with your own opinion on it.
Yeah.
Not really. It's read my blog about flat Earth. Watch my videos.
I mean,
we're treating it as though there's this binary of options between flat Earth and spherical, or what was the other word? Spheroid?
Spheroid, yeah.
That's fine. But we're being presented as though those are two equal and legitimate options that a person can research one of them in the same way that you can research the other one.
Yes, they both can be researched, and they have been researched, and that's how we ended up with a round Earth and not a flat Earth, because there was no data to support it.
But I guess my point is that just because it's out there as a hypothesis doesn't mean it's worth researching.
Well, yeah. You can make hypotheses that like when I don't know, when pigs are 1 month old, they have wings, so they fly around.
Exactly.
Because, we hardly ever see baby pigs. We only see adult pigs. That means that...
Research flying pigs.
Yes. Research flying pigs. And that's a real fact. It's saying research flat earth. My answer is yes, it has been researched and been falsified.
Well, there's billboards in Alberta that say research flat earth on the highway from Edmonton to Calgary. And so it's like someone, like, that is being taken as something that we should do. And I feel like there's often this false presentation that just because someone has a different opinion, that opinion is a hypothesis worth considering.
Yeah.
So, for example, climate deniers will say, well, you need to prove to me that climate change is accelerated by human action or something like this. But it's like, no, you need to prove to me that it's not, because I have the balance of evidence.
That's what the evidence is, what should speak at the end. And the evidence has been speaking in the case of climate change, that like overwhelmingly there's evidence there to support the climate change. A human caused climate change. Because that's another way that people started getting around it, by saying like, oh, it's a natural phenomena. Yes, temperature variations are natural phenomena, and ice ages are natural phenomena, and nobody argues with that. What is happening is the level of carbon, the rate at which it's going, is not natural. It's like death is a natural phenomena, so dying at the age of 60 or 80 is a natural phenomena. But you cannot take the natural phenomena and add it to a 1-year-old and say that's a natural phenomenon. That means that something has happened there. And that's what's happening. It's like accelerated pace at which climate is changing. Yeah.
Anyway, it's really bothersome when we are supposedly being thought of as closed-minded because we're not considering every possible option as a theory on equal standing with, I don't know, the idea that pigs have wings or whatever,
Actually, no, Shaq goes the other way. Not debatable. It's flat. Kyrie, flat. Draymond, flat. What is going on?
We tend to form the beliefs based on a couple things. One is our...
So here they're using like celebrity status of people and what their belief is. Is someone going to go to them and be like, hey, tell me what a best cancer cure is for this type of cancer? So, no, right? So I don't know why the celebrity status here matters.
I think it just lends legitimacy, and people have familiarity with celebrities, so they think, well, they can't be completely wrong, or... I mean, I think this is just like the appeal to popularity, where it's just like, a lot of people there's an increase in the amount of people that believe it, such that even Shaq believes it, or even this person believes it. Yeah. But also the celebrity, I think, does kind of lend a little bit of expertise to it. False expertise, right? You have Gwyneth Paltrow is not a nutritionist, not a dietitian. But, these guys are not... Like, when that person poses the question, flat earth or round earth, that makes it sound like,
Yeah, you have a choice and be part of one camp or the other.
Are you a vegetarian or do you eat meat? It's up to a choice. It's your lifestyle choice. Yeah. It's like, no, it's not a choice. On the same basis.
That is a very great example. Yeah. It's not a choice,
Yeah. Or at least it shouldn't be. Like, the way the world is should determine our beliefs, not, how we want to make our identity.
If you get online, you'll see pages and pages of so-called evidence that seems scientific, right? Here's an equation, here's a diagram, and you go, maybe they're onto something there. Then I feel like that's just as good as an opinion of a physicist or a consensus of, 20 physicists.
We've all been brainwashed by scientism, by those priests of a new religion.
So that was one very important thing he said there, is the word consensus. Because that's how science works. It's consensus. It's not my word. It's not your word. It's our collective word. We all test each other's hypotheses and collectively build evidence and build a consensus of what it is. And that is how science progresses, and that's why science progresses slow, and that is why science also changes, because how the consensus builds, more and more evidence come, then it's like independently tested, independently verified.
Which is interesting, because even earlier in the documentary, the one guy who was working with his brain coach or whatever was talking about how, science says this one day and then it says something else the next day. And like that's a straw person version of science, as if they're just like flip-flopping. But it also discounts the virtue of changing your mind when there's new evidence. So I think that it's like, would it be proof of scientific method that you find something out once and then you never change? Like would that be by itself proof? Like, people use this with politicians all the time as well. Like, oh, well, 10 years ago you were against this idea.
Yeah. And
now you're for it. Well, we could be in a completely different economic situation. Like, things change, and maybe it's a virtue to change your mind.
Yeah.
So it's just really interesting that we have this idea that saying one thing and sticking to it no matter what is a good thing. I just find that very odd.
And that is seen as a weakness. Whereas, in fact, that's the strength of science, is that given the new evidence, the scientific knowledge and the scientific mindset would change.
Yeah, so the idea would be that, like, weeding out error is part of the process. And over time, you're building consensus. And that consensus means that a particular claim has survived a process.
Yeah, exactly. So
the process of scrutiny.
Very important. Like, take the example of, like, vaccines cause autism. It started by, well, I don't know if it started by or not, but the main foundation pillar is a scientist and their work. And it's multiple independent studies in multiple countries with multiple vaccines have shown it doesn't work. And that means that result...
it's not connected.
It's not connected. Like, vaccines don't cause autism. And so that did not become scientific knowledge. That did not become scientific fact. That was a hypothesis that got falsified, and it's out of science. But it's not out of people's mind. Because, like, oh, that scientist said this, but they don't listen to, like, other 80 scientists saying that, no, that's not working. But then it becomes conspiracy that you're trying to suppress truth being put forward by one person. They see that one person as a whistleblower, but the one person is not a whistleblower. The whistleblowers are the 80 people who together have put together and saying, like, no, that one's the false one.
Yeah, and then what you have is this flip-flop between the person who is going against scientific consensus is being sort of expelled by science, but then being embraced by those who have a distrust of science. So then his being expelled is then further reason to believe him, because he's somehow rogue or renegade or a maverick, or
gets him the street cred. He was expelled from the medical profession, because if you're practicing medicine on false facts or false results, then it's harming to human health.
And that's what academic integrity is.
That's what
you have to adequately report on your findings.
In his case, he falsified his findings,